This is the next installment of my screencasts for um, the 126 class. We're going to cover how to make a simple mask, how to make a track matte mask, and how to animate type on a path. I'll also show you how to add a black frame to the beginning and ending of your composition. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to create a new project, and the easiest way to do that is Command-Shift-S. Oh wait, that's QuickTime, sorry. Command-Shift-S, or it would be Control-Shift-S on a PC. I think there's only a few of you out there. But this is Untitled Project. I'm going to call it Mask Path, something tricky like that. Save it to my desktop just for convenience sake. I'll go ahead and replace the one I've already done. We can start by making a new composition. I'll click this composition button. It's defaulted, actually has it? It's defaulted to the settings that I have last used, which are HDV, HDTV 720 with 29.9 frames a second. It's also defaulted to white background. I can go in here and go 5 seconds, 5 period for 5 seconds to make that. I don't think I need more than 5 seconds per composition. And I'll call this first composition mask. And okay, I'm not worried about having a main composition here, so I can just get started with mask. Just going to make a word, a simple word. I'll do the same one I did in class, which was hey. Okay. The important thing about making a simple mask is that it needs to be inside that type layer. So I need to be selected on that layer. So not selected, selected. So I clicked off, that's selected. Okay. I'll go to shapes, the shape tool, I'll go to the ellipse tool, and I'll create a shape that resides, and if I hold the shift key down, it resides right inside that layer. If I haven't let go of my mouse and I move the cursor around, my mouse around, I can put it in position right over the hay. So that's pretty centered up and ready to go. You'll notice it made this mask layer inside that type layer. So I can toggle down this mask, and you'll see it's got a little bit of a different set of animators associated with it. And I want to show you that these animators are pretty interesting. You can do cool things with them. I can say mask expansion. I can go and set a keyframe with my stopwatch, and I'll work backwards so that I'm kind of working in reverse. And if I go down the timeline a ways and click on this 0 pixels and move it into the negative, you'll see that I've closed that all the way up. That's negative 154 pixels, and I'll just show you what that looks like when I play it with the space bar. It just kind of opens up like the Warner Brothers cartoon. So that's an interesting way to use this mask. I would highly recommend you play around with mask opacity, mask feather. That's just going to make the edges blurry. Mask path, we can do that if we Command Z out of our mask expansion. We can I can show you how I can make this mask move by doing kind of the same thing. I'm going to click on the stopwatch, and then, sorry, I blew up on that real quick. I can work in reverse again, and I can just grab this path. As long as I have the pointer tool up here, I can grab the path and I can move it. And that's cool, just reveals that inside the mask. If I wanted to reverse that so that it just, this became something that hid the type, I could click on inverted and it basically inverts the mask. So that's nice to remember too. So that's a simple mask. And let's make a new composition, and I'll show you how to make a track matte mask. It's defaulted to everything I had before, and that's great. I'll hit OK. That's a new composition. Maybe I should name it. So I can go back to composition settings. I just did a right click on that. I can also go Command K. I will call this track matte. And that's M-A-T-T-E. And I think everything else is fine, and I'll hit OK. Now I have, I'm back to a new composition. I can put my type in. I'll put the same type in. Hey. This time I want to show you I am not going to be on that layer. I want a different layer, so I just want that to be deselected when I make another shape, right? So if I make another shape like so, that ends up being this shape layer. I can rename that shape layer if I wanted to. I can just hit the return key if I'm selected on it and make that mask. So that's going to be a mask at some point. I have this kind of bright color. I might use that color at some point, but I want to make sure that I know it's doing its job as a mask. So what I might do is change it to a color I may never use, like something super bright and kind of ugly. Okay, so let's take this hay. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to use the transform here, and I'm just going to change the position of this hay. And I'll work in reverse again. I just want to get you used to working in reverse. This is where I want it to end up, so I'm going to do my stopwatch here, and I'm going to move back in time, and I'll just move this hay underneath this big rectangle that I made, and I'm going to move it about half out. And I want to show you this. Okay, so track matte. Now I can hide the track matte or reveal the track matte with this little circle and square icon down here. Just ways that we can show and hide tools. So if I click on this top layer, this mask layer, if I click this track matte, I want you to see what it does. It kind of reveals this, or it changes the color right now of this hay. And so I could go down and on the hay layer, on the layer that's being affected by the track matte, I can do something fun and go alpha matte mask, and that reveals the hay inside of the mask. Or I could go alpha inverted mask, and that basically kind of just makes this thing pop out and reveal that. I can do the same thing if I go down here. I can do the same thing with this mask in the transform. I can move it around. It's just a shape. I can say take this position and go down the timeline and move this back over. Right. So it works the same way as anything else, even though it's a mask. So I've revealed it and I've covered it up. Okay. Let's do one more, and I'm going to make a new composition, and I'm going to call it path. This one's a little trickier, and it has kind of very little to do with masks, but it's a good time for it. So I'm going to go back and doing the same thing. I'm going to create some type, and I'm going to go, hey, you. That's what we did in class. So once I have this hey you all set up, that's cool. Just put it anywhere. I'm going to make sure that I'm inside this type layer when I go ahead and click, open that up. I'm going to click on this pen tool, and I'm going to make a shape out of with this pen tool. And to make the shape round, I click and drag. That's how the Bezier tool works. I'm going to make this one loop-de-loop. I think in class I made it roller coaster. And I can go in and I can change that later. So as long as I get pretty close, it's fine, right? If I go to the pointer tool, I can click on these curves and I can move them around, move this around, make it a little smoother. However I want to do it, doesn't really matter. The goal is I'm going to make this type ride on this path, and I do that if I open up text. So once I made this path, it's going to give me some options. So I twirl down until I get to path options, and I can open this up and tell it that I want the type to respond to that path. And I do that because it feels like I made another mask, and I just click on mask 1 and it attaches it to this path. So it is attached to the path. There's no keyframes yet, and in order to make that operate the way I want it to operate, I'm going to need to add another animator to what we have here, and I do that by going to animate position. Okay, so down here you'll get animator 1, you'll get position, and if I start at the beginning here, right up here, and I click that position stopwatch, and then I'm just concerned really with this set of coordinates. If I move this one, it's going to move it off that path. But if I move this one, it's going to move it on the path. So I just Command Z'd it back to where it's going there. If I go down the timeline a little ways and I start to move this, it will start to animate. And if I hold the Shift key on this, it'll animate a lot faster, because I'd be scrolling for days just trying to get that to work. Right? So now it's actually animating on that path. Okay, seems pretty simple. Before I let you go, let's just add a black frame to the beginning and end of this composition, right? And since I'm about here, I'll just add the black frame a little sooner. We can always trim down our work area, and I'll show you how to do that when we're done. But I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to layer new solid. Actually, I want to make sure I'm not selected on this layer. And it doesn't really matter where I'm at on the timeline. I can go down here and go layer, new, solid. And that's a black solid. That's what I want. And I'm going to go OK. And that just creates a black solid for the entire timeline. But I could squish it down here so that it's just a frame. And so it's going to start on the black frame. I can also take that layer and open it up and change the opacity and make a fade in, right? We know how to do that. Stopwatch, keyframes. If I like the size of this black solid, I could make another black solid and do the same thing that I did, right? Or I can duplicate this solid with Command D, and that is the duplicate of black solid. I can change it if I wanted to black solid 2, and that I just hit the return key, and that allows me to change it. And I can take this black solid, I can move it to wherever the action stops, which is probably about there. I can make it shorter. I can move this down. And I want to show you that I can trim this composition so that if I wanted to just make it this amount of time, because that's all I need, I can go to composition and I can go trim comp to work area, and that basically just trims the whole thing down. So let's run it back all the way, and there it is. And we started and ended with a black frame. Got it? Okay, I'll see you guys in class.